Hello friends, we'll be discussing the concept of a socialist economy here. Now, as we have already discussed the concept of capitalist economy, let's understand what do we mean by socialist economy and what are the merits and features and demerits of it. Let's understand that. The concept of socialist economy has its own origin in the drawbacks of capitalism. That means wherever capitalism lacked, that's where socialist economy came into picture. There are no predetermined details of socialist system, but its main features are well recognized. That means there are no such predetermined or pre-made systems of socialist economy, but they are very well recognized right now. The system tries to get rid of the drawbacks of capitalism and incorporate those features which are desirable. So whatever drawbacks we had in the capitalism economy, those are supposed to be eradicated, and the other things that are supposed to be incorporated to eradicate them has been taken care in this kind of economy. For example, it aims at removing the problems of inequalities of income and wealth, inequalities of economic opportunities, unemployment, cyclical fluctuations, and waste of productive resources. So, probably it takes into consideration all the things what we called as a drawback in the capitalist economy, which is unequal distribution of income and wealth, and then unbiased results, productivity, wastage of resources. Everything has been considered in this economy. The advocates of socialism believe that most of these drawbacks come into being because of certain basic features of capitalism, including the institution of private property and inheritance and the use of market mechanism. So, because of the use of private property and the market mechanism here, that's what led to the rise of socialist economy here. That's what they want to prove. In the words of, or rather in the words of H.D. Dickinson, socialism or socialism is an organization of the society in which material means the productions, or rather material means owns of productions are owned by the whole commodity and operated by organs representative and responsible to all the members of the community. That means whatever one product is supposed to be owned or rather produced, everyone is equally responsible for the production of the same thing, so they work as a team basically. Now, according to socialism, accordingly, or rather, we can talk about socialism is basically designed to have the following silent features. So, next are the features that we'll be discussing of it. The features would be in socialist economy, the institution of private property and inheritance are abolished. So whatever we had in capital economy or rather capitalism economy, where we had the constitution or the subject matter of private property and inheritance of it has been completely abolished here. The next will be there is no private sector. There is no private sector, that the term or rather the term of private sector doesn't exist in here. It means that ownership of means of production is not in the hands of individual and household. That means whatever ownership that we have is not in the hands of production or the household. That means everyone is an equal contributor to it. Instead, they are owned by the government authorities or cooperative or society. That means in socialism economy, everything is owned by the government or by cooperative bodies or by societies here. Individuals and households do not own any business concerns. So this is one more thing that they've mentioned. Individuals and household, they do not hold any business concern here. And no one is an employee of a private business. Everyone is equal owner, everyone is equally responsible for the same thing. Hence, no one is an employer here or no one is an employee here of a private business, just like in the case that we had in capital economy. Now, private ownership is allowed only in the case of consumption of goods and personal belongings, and that too only to a limited extent. Private consumption is allowed only where they have personal belongings, and that too that is very restricted there. So we can call it as negligible in first instance. And to that extent, even inheritance of private property may be allowed. So inheritance of private property may be allowed, that is only in certain cases. An important implication of the abolition of private property and inheritance in the economic decision making is no longer left in private hands. So whatever inheritance of private property was there, whatever encumbrance that we had earlier has no longer been left in the private hand, because this is completely owned by the government or cooperative bodies or societies who are formed for such things. Now, a socialist economy is not guided by free working of market mechanism. It is rendered ineffective. In sense, its operation is frozen. Second thing, consumers and producers are not allowed for freedom in their decision making. So basically, what they're trying to say is that whatever restrictions they had earlier for individuals here has been removed completely, and it has been made as unbiased economy basically. So everyone has equal opportunity to grow there. No one has a monopolistic control in here. That's what they want to explain in this situation. The consumer must take decision within the limits set by the authorities. So whatever authorities limitations has been set, only that much decision can be taken, or rather the decisions are restricted by those limits here. They also lay down production schedules and decide what to produce, how much to produce, and what resources to be used as inputs. So there is a basic schedule: what to produce, how much to produce, and what are the basic resources required for such production here. That is already predetermined. Thus, demand and supply forces are not to respond to changes in prices. So even if there are changes in prices, the demand and supply force here doesn't clash, or rather demand and supply force doesn't have to basically turn the prices of that specific good, or rather of that specific service. Now, instead, they are regulated with objective of serving national interest. So, if we are working with the social economy, make sure that that thing is only serving for national interest and not an individual interest here. Similarly, prices are not allowed to fluctuate in response to the change in demand and supply. So, as we have discussed earlier, that demand and supply has no effect on the change in price, and neither change in price will have an effect on the demand and supply. It's a vice versa thing. The authorities, or rather they are also controlled and regulated by the authorities. So authorities like the government bodies, like the societies, cooperative bodies, they have complete authority on this, and they control the whole situation basically. Only in some cases cooperatives may be permitted to change the price within the certain limits. Now everything has an exception here. So in this case also, the exception is that only in certain cases they're allowed to change the prices, only if they are permitted to do that, only in certain cases. That's the matter of fact. Now, systematic operations of a complex economy necessitates a complex and a vast setup of decision making. In capitalism, this complex task is handled by market mechanism, but in socialism, its substitute must be created. This is usually done by the form of centralized economic planning. So basically, whatever economic planning that we had earlier in the capitalism economy, whereby one individual used to take the decision, here in socialism, that is formed or that is made as per the central economic planning team. There is a specific team for it who takes the decision, who makes the decision basically, and according to those, the rules and regulations are set there. Now, a socialist economy recognizes the ill effects of money and credit. It definitely recognizes the ill effects that can happen if money and credit is utilized in an inappropriate manner. In capitalist system, these create cyclical fluctuations, inequalities, and income of wealth. So basically, the inequalities of income and wealth happened in capitalism mostly due to ill effects, or rather ill usage of money and credit. Ideally, therefore, a socialist economy prefers not to have these institutions. They have completely banned that thing. But the hard reality is that it cannot do without them. The hard reality is that socialist economy needs certain institutions for financing, for funding. So it's like a give and take relation that they have. In an economy which produces many goods and services, cannot have an efficient system of planning rationing, or rather physical rationing. It must create and operate a complex system of income distribution, which is not possible without using money in the same form, or rather in some form. So basically there has to be complex situation, or rather complex system to handle, because day in day out you'll be handling with a lot of things, because you're dealing with national interest and not just individual interest. So you need to have a complex system that can understand all these transactions, that can understand this economy and work according to that. Accordingly, it is not able to completely discard the use of money and credit, but restrict to the minimum necessary extent. Now, we'll be understanding the merits of this kind of economy in the first place. A socialist economy discards the use of market mechanism and replaces it with some form of regulatory authorities such as planning commission. So basically, socialist economy has moved out the concept of market mechanism, and they have gotten a team basically to handle all these situations. It also abolishes the institution of private property and inheritance, as discussed earlier. Given these features of socialist economy, it tries to remove the basic demerits of capitalism by pursuing the objective of coordinated development, elements of or elimination of social disputes. So whatever social disputes are there, they have to be eliminated, and this is the first most important reason why a social economy has came into picture here. Distributive justice is another institution, or rather the equal distribution of income is one of the most important aspect here. Social security, elimination of fluctuation of economy, whatever inflations, deflations we have these days, is one of the major important part why this economy has came into picture, so that the capitalism doesn't take care of the inflation and deflation. Inflation and deflation is a market situation or a condition that happens due to certain factors which affect it. So these are taken care by social economy to make sure that there are no such inflations or no such deflations on very often basis. Now, the demerits will have, while socialism can get rid of problems of income inequalities, unemployment, cyclical fluctuations of national income and prices, it is not able to provide economic incentive and disincentives for hard work and initiative. Whatever initiative or whatever incentives we had in capitalism for the hard work and effort taken by the individual, socialism doesn't have that. As a result, it continues to suffer for slow growth, and because of this, of course, there will be slow growth rate that will be encountered here at every individual level or at every possible level that you can think of. On account of these weaknesses, the economy, it becomes difficult to raise the consumption standard of the masses. So whatever lifestyle we have right now, it is difficult for that lifestyle to go upgraded version. The reason being the per capita income earning opportunity is very less, as there are less incentives and there are no initiatives for hard work and any kind of extra effort that can be taken, because that requires incentive and that is not a part of social economy here. And this gives rise to the necessity of restructuring the economic system for better results, and because of this there is a necessity or requirement to build an upgraded version of the economy, and that brings us to the end of this, and rather that brings us to the start of the next economy that we'll be discussing later on. So this is all that we had when it comes to a socialist economy, the features, the merits and the demerits of it. So this is all that we can discuss about it. Thank you.